Hello and welcome to the Athletic Soccer Show. It's our post-game review from the World Cup semi-final. The first of two where Argentina have just beaten Croatia 3-0 to secure their spot in Sunday's showpiece. My name is Jack Collins and I'll be your host there. I'm joined once again by the wonderful Rich Amofa. Rich, how you doing?
Hey Jack, yeah, really good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very good. I'm very good. We've just witnessed a Messi masterclass on one of the biggest stages in world football at 35 years old. And that, I think, is the main talking point. We'll work our way through the game. But before we do that, to drop that kind of performance in a game that was billed as very tight, we've seen Croatia been incredibly hard to break down. They've been resilient. They've controlled games in the middle. They've been really good at dictating the tempo. And Messi has just basically run over them.
Yeah, I think tonight we saw genius at play because you're absolutely right. When the semi-final matchup was confirmed, we thought it would be quite a tight affair. We know how Croatia like to set up, with their very deep and try and restrict all the space which is there. But somehow Messi was able to find it, and somehow Messi was able to dictate the game like the genius he is. And as you say, just that the all-round performance was just something out of this world. And you just it's again you this is what you want to see from the top players, and he's produced at that level, and it's just amazing to see.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, the first 30 minutes of this were a little bit tepid. I mean, I think the team started relatively well, first 5-10, knocking the ball about nicely both sides. And then it sort of got dragged into a relatively drab encounter before it was lit up by this penalty decision. Now, it's one that's elicited a fair amount of debate on social media. I would say that about 70% of people are convinced that this is a stonewall penalty, and 30% of people are absolutely convinced that the keeper can do nothing about this. The debate on our ITV at halftime revolved around all three pundits saying they didn't think it was a penalty, saying that what can the keeper do in situations he hasn't run into Julian Alvarez. He hasn't made, himself into a force to take him out, and Alvarez has nicked the ball around him. He's just stood still, basically. He's even stopped his forward momentum. And Peter Walton, the referee, said, well, he's got to get a hand on the ball. And that was basically where I landed on it. If you come for that and the ball goes past you, you have to make contact with it. Otherwise, you're denying a clear goal scoring opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's where it was decisive at the end of the day. If you get to hand in a ball, then he's made the save, and you play on. But otherwise, he's not played the ball, and he's played the man, and it's a foul. And it's something which those kind of decisions aren't always given, and usually go in favour of the goalkeeper. But if you look at that scenario, if that happens anywhere else on the pitch with any other player, it's a foul. So no, it's good to see that those decisions were given. Really, I mean, I can see where other people are coming from in terms of where can he go? He's run into him, but ultimately, it is a foul. It is a penalty, and as you say Argentina on their way.
I had a very, very civilized and sensible debate on Twitter, which is something that I don't say very
Rare.
often. So exactly. So I wanted to bring it up. I'm chatting to someone called @GolfDad Craig. He's been explaining, some of the rules, because we disagreed on this. He doesn't think it's a penalty. He says the rule states impeding the progress of an opponent without contact involves you having to move into or force to change direction when the ball's not within playing distance. All players have right to their position on the field of play. Being in the way of an opponent is not the same as moving into the way of an opponent. My counterpoint to this was, if I'm running at a defender and I nutmeg them and then we collide, I think it's a foul. And I think it gets given 99.9% of the time.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And so therefore it's kind of the same argument from where I'm standing.
Yeah, no, exactly. The argument whereby if that happens anywhere else on the field, and that exact same scenario, you are going to get the free kick, without doubt. It's very rare that you wouldn't. So I just think the same just has to apply here. I mean, to be fair, when I first saw it, I did think penalty, and usually your gut's correct, isn't it? And yeah, just say I thought it was a clear foul, to be fair. And yeah, as I said earlier, I see the debate. I see it, I do get it, but you have to give a penalty there. You just have to.
It's nice to see decisions going in favour of forwards as well, I think. And, these are something I think we've talked about in the game, and you see offsides, and usually I'd say the defenders get the benefit of the doubt just with the back foot and those kind of elements. I know that's not necessarily the laws of the game, but you just tend to see defenders getting these elements. So to see strikers and forwards gambling and it paying off for them, I think is a positive for the game as a whole. I mean, there may be debate about the penalty. There was absolutely no debate in the way that Lionel Messi dispatched it. He's been waiting for the keepers to move. Not this time. Absolutely slammed into that top corner. Unsavable is how I would describe it.
Unsavable, unbelievable. It's always a not a risk, but to go high, especially as you saw the other night. It's Harry Kane tried, and he failed. But when it goes in like that and it's dispatched top corner like that, so you can put two goalkeepers in there. It's not getting anywhere near it. So it was just fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, there's no conversation to be had. Just like that is how you put them away. But I suppose considering Messi has missed a penalty in this tournament, there's always that kind of sense of nerve. I think there has been in both the previous occasions, in both the actual game itself against the Netherlands, also in the shootout. There is that kind of please don't let him miss, because that's all anyone's going to talk about for such a long time if he does. And he seems to be getting more and more confident with them as we go through this tournament, which is a nice thing to see. And Argentina made it to a couple of seconds almost, it felt like, later. The game exploded into life in these couple of minutes. And, this one is as scrappy as you're going to see a goal. Now, credit to Julian Alvarez, I should say, really, because the way that he is so determined to get this ball, the sheer endeavor that he has to get this and get through it and kind of batter his way through the Croatian defense, which is at 6s and 7s, is remarkable. And it's just such brilliant forward play in that it's that bull in a China kind of shop thing. And my friend Sam Tice said that he's reminding him more and more of Carlos Tevez recently. And I think it was a nice comparison because that was a very Tevez goal.
Yeah, where the goal concerned, it's definitely a Tevez goal. When it was a lovely ball for Messi again to play around the corner to get to Alvarez, and from there it was almost as if you're saying, "Okay, I'm the furthest man, I'm the highest man on the pitch. I'm just going to get my head down. I'm going to make my way towards the box and see what happens." And that's exactly what happened. It wasn't really much skill involved. It wasn't really much, twisting and turning or jinking in and out. But he was rewarded for determination. On the flip side, you have to say it's really poor defending. He's run through to their centre backs there, who you're expecting stronger challenges there. But they've almost been punished for their weak defending. But on the flip side, Alvarez has been rewarded for his determination, for his strength, and his single-mindedness to just run through. And as you say, you got the rub of the green with the last touch, and he scored. But I think if you're Croatia, you're thinking, that goal's so preventable because as well as those two defenders, there were about 3 or 4 other midfielders you got back as well who could have made a challenge and didn't. So I think to concede then as well, it was really poor, not just in terms of the goal, but just in terms of the whole game state as well, because they're going 1-0 at half time, which they have done, multiple occasions. They're probably thinking, okay, we're still in this game. We can still maintain our usual game of keep ball and try and wind Argentina down. But going down 2-0 at the break, it really, it would have had to force Croatia to come out. And we saw in the second half, Argentina just kept hitting them on the break. And it was a matter of time before they went and got their third, really.
Yeah, I mean, this is it. And you talk about bloody single-mindedness, which I think is a really nice way of putting it in terms of where he was. It was almost like the blinkers had gone on for a horse in the race. And he was like, well, there's the goal. I'm going to run at that and see what happens. But some credit needs to be given to Nahuel Molina as well, because his run across the back to take a defender away, to drag Borna Sosa over, who ends up, slicing the tackle that ultimately gives Alvarez the opportunity to score. It is absolutely sensational, and that kind of running from a fullback at that point. Never, he's played wing back the last couple of games, but at that point he's playing just as a fullback in a 4. To get that far forward and to have the kind of nous to get across him and drag a defender away is sensational.
Yeah, it is, and they're the key things which people don't see, is that kind of that football intelligence, to take players away, especially that area, that position where he's made a long busting run up the pitch about 60, 70 yards, and then to take the player away. It was just fantastic thinking, and I was impressed with him today, because when we saw Argentina's line up with the four central midfielders across, there would have been a lot of onus on him to get up and down the pitch from right back, and you say that was a great example of him doing that, and it proved to be effective. He's not going to get the assist stats for that. He's not going to get the accolades, but Alvarez would have certainly appreciated him taking one defender away anyway. And as you say, it proved to be decisive for him.
I'm going to start calling those Cristiano Ronaldo assists, a bit like the one where he nearly headed it and didn't, because that's definitely caused the goal. But you can't give any credit for it if there's no touches on the ball. You're right, though, and I think it's really interesting that was the kind of game-breaking moment in so many ways, because it felt like Alvarez has just gone kind of Super Saiyan on everyone and just gone, I'm just legging it at the goal, fine. But you're absolutely spot on in that it goes from a game where Croatia can continue to play their game plan, can continue to just, be compact, be resolute, and hope that a chance falls their way in the second half, to we've got to go for it now. And they went for their own version of Louis van Gaal's two towers ploy, by bringing on Bruno Pekovic alongside Kramaric in the second half, and trying to sort of get balls into him. But it just didn't feel like at any point it was working for Croatia. And maybe this is the point where you look at this team and go, you've been incredibly resilient. You've earned your spot in this semi-final through, in some ways, force of will, control of tempo in the middle, sure, but up front, making it happen when it didn't look like there was a hope. At this point, it just felt like too big a mountain to climb.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for all of their, superb midfield playing, so, I've heard over it throughout the tournament, you do need to have that cutting edge up front, and it's something which they haven't had. They've done well to stay in games and to take games to extra time and penalties and things like that, and have been full value for their victories and have really deserved them. But when it matters, sometimes you just need to have that cutting edge just to give you the opportunity to stay in a game. We saw that with Holland the other day. They threw on all of their men mountains, and they were able to be effective. But we didn't really see that from Croatia today. As you mentioned, they're bringing on a big man, but there wasn't really any sustained attacks. There weren't any real threats to Argentina, and I think it was interesting because at 2-0 in the last game against Netherlands, we saw them wobble. We saw them nervous and, being quite erratic. But in this game, no chance of that. Aragon brought on Lisandro Martinez and made further defensive substitutions as well, either going to a 5 at the back. And yeah, they were just determined to not make the same mistake again, shut up shop and just see the game out. And I was impressed with the way they did that today.
Yeah, and they did so in fine style, because this third goal was, well, it belongs in the Louvre, some would say, a genuine piece of artwork from Lionel Messi. And look, we've been full of praise as well for Josko Gvardiol throughout this tournament. I think many have said he's been the best defender throughout this tournament. I wouldn't disagree with that in terms of how much his stock has risen throughout this tournament. But when you're looking at this, and sometimes you just have to, doff your cap to a higher power. And the way that Messi twists him inside and out for this third goal, and a 15-year age gap between them. Gvardiol is 20, Messi is 35. It made absolutely no difference. Yes, he tied him in knots.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to bow to a master at work, master at play. Because, I mean, what happened on that right flank was just a joke. I mean, as you say, he picked up the ball. And as they said in commentary, it wasn't really pace that got him away, but it was the ability to stop, slow down, change direction at speed, which ultimately did him. And as you said, Guardiola has been one of the top defenders of this tournament. I'm sure he'll get a big move, if not in January, in the summer. Very talented, but Messi made him look like a small boy there for about 10, 15 seconds sustained. It was just inevitable as to, whether Messi would score himself or get an assist. And as you say, he toyed with him. And again, end product, got in that, so he got to the byline, and he made the right decision. Sometimes you might see players try and flash it across the box. You might see players, try and shoot or whatever. But he had the peace of mind, as always, to make the right decision in the box, and he cut it back perfectly. And say it was 3-0. But as you say, yeah, that montage, that sequence of plays, it deserves to be somewhere. Maybe sell it as an NFT or something, because it was incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure someone will make that attempt at some point. But you know what? It's a fourth goal for Julian Alvarez as well. You know, he has erupted into the limelight, and you know, a lot of us have been talking about him since he was at River Plate, and we thought that move to Man City was a good move, but a brave one in so many ways. It thought somewhere maybe where he was getting consistent minutes would have been a better stop for his first stop in Europe. But it doesn't seem to have slowed him down a touch. His ability, whether he's playing through the middle, whether he's playing out wide, to stretch defenses, to make the intelligent runs, to do the scrappy stuff well as the very, very kind of glossy stuff that he does awesomely, as well as that. It's just a complete forward in so many ways. And I can't wait to see where his career goes.
Yeah, it's really exciting. You know, if from a Manchester City point of view, to have him as a backup to Haaland, I think it's scary for everyone else, to be honest. But I think you're absolutely right. The way that he's so dogged and determined up front, you know, as you say, he stretches to play, and I think it's really important in this Argentina side to do that, because you know we know Messi likes to drop in there, likes to, you know, stroll around and find space behind him, but it doesn't really work, and it won't work if we don't have a striker who's willing to stretch the play. And he's a willing runner. He'll do that all game. He'll continue to do that, hit the channels, hit the flanks, and occupy the two centre backs. And when he's in front of goal, you're confident that he's going to hit the back of the net as well. So yeah, it's great to see his development. I think people who may not have known too much about him going into the tournament will see that he's got all the you know, the potential to be a top striker moving forward.
We saw the end of Luka Modric. His not World Cup career, because he'll obviously play in the bronze medal match now, but the end of his kind of first class World Cup career, should we say, at this point. What a player. I just think it is worth pointing out, because he's had a World Cup final and a World Cup semi-final in the last two editions of the tournament. I imagine he'll play in the next Euros, but I can't see him making it to 2026. Just worth putting up, you know, as a hand for the genius at work that is Luka Modric. Couldn't get a massive handle on the game today, but that shouldn't deter from his legacy.
No, not at all. It's been fantastic to watch. It's a real education. You know, he puts in a clinic every time he gets in the pitch. So just the way he's, you know, he glides across the pitch. You know, his passing, his intelligence, and also his work rate as well, which sometimes goes under the radar as well. He's just a complete midfielder. And yeah, as you say, it was quite sad to see him kind of, you know, trudging off. But at the same time, I feel like someone like him deserved that ovation from the Croatian fans. And it was nice to see that when he went off as well, you know, the whole bench was stood up, and, you know, everyone gave him a high five. And it was a kind of end of an era moment, really. But it was great to see that it was marked well. But yeah, again, another genius at work, really. Very lucky to see him over the years. And yeah, sad to see him kind of bow out in this way.
In the battles of LM10, he's got one and Messi's got one. And I think we'll all will allow that on the international stage at the very least. But Rich, before we go and before we close this off, has your opinion on Argentina changed? Because I think there was an element up to this point where it felt like Argentina were good but fallible. And we saw that against the Dutch. We saw it a little bit at the end of the Australia game. Obviously, people are always going to talk about that Saudi Arabia game at the very start of the tournament. This was a very, very composed, complete performance, I thought, from Argentina. They did all the things that they needed to do. They were patient. They kept the ball well. They stretched the lines where they needed to. They changed formation again. So it's not just that we've seen them in this five at the back and anywhere else. This is the kind of performance I think will give Argentinian fans heart ahead of whoever they play in the final, because it looks like a team that continues to grow into each game.
Yeah, I think the opening day defeat has really kind of kicked them into gear, really. And you've seen a side which has grown momentum throughout the tournament. Yes, there have been times where they've been shaky, been fallible. As you say, look at the last two games, for example. But you have to give the manager credit there, because he changed the formation to 4-4-2 with four central midfielders there to really try and nullify Croatia's main threat, which is their midfield. And, you know, kind of making it a 4-against-3, sometimes even a 5-against-3 with Messi dropping in and kind of nullifying the space for, you know, Croatia's danger men. And, you know, so little decisions like that, little tweaks like that, it just goes a long way. And we saw that today, because Croatia weren't able to create really anything. You know, their three midfield weren't able to do that. And that was just because of that formation change, really. So you're seeing a side which has grown in momentum throughout the tournament. And yeah, as you say, it will give Argentinian fans hope and, you know, that kind of optimism for the final, because we've seen all their games and they thrived in the chaos, but so almost broken really. But they're quite calm, they're comfortable today. They saw their game out very well, and they're going to need that kind of mentality going into the France game, because that can there's potential to be a great game.
The France game.
Let me take that back. Let me take that back. Let me take that back. Sorry, I said that straight away. Let me take that back, please. Whenever they play in the final, there's an element of chaos which is going to be there. If Argentina are able to nullify that chaos, as we saw today, they were very calm and composed and saw the game out. So whether that's against Morocco, whether that is against France, there will be the element of the opponent trying to bring that chaos to the game. And as you say, the fact that Argentina were able to stop that was really good to see. So yeah, full credit to them, and on they go. And apologies to, of course, my Moroccan friends and supporters for being so presumptuous there.
I don't think anyone will take too much umbrage to that. It does feel that anything tomorrow would be a major shock, but shocks have been the bread and butter of this tournament, my friend. But for now, Lionel Messi and Argentina are into the final. The last hurrah for the great man continues on course. We will see who they're going to be meeting tomorrow. But from us here on the Athletic Soccer Show, thank you so much to Mr. Rich Amofa.
Hey, thanks for having me. Good to see you.
And you, my friend. Thank you so much for tuning in as ever. I've been Jack Collins, and we'll see you tomorrow, gang. Take it easy.